may be shared across media platforms and might be posted on YouTube. For those that will be joining us via Zoom, your participant name, comments, and your audio, should you choose to turn on this function, will form part of this recording. For those attending in person, your verbal questions and presentation of your name, should you choose to share it with me, would also be part of the recording. So for those on Zoom, we have a lovely group in front of us in person, and we have about 40 to 50 people that are going to be in person coming in, and about 40 to 50 people online tonight. Our lineup for this evening, we're going to start with Doug McRae is going to be first up. He's the Director of Transportation and Mobility at the city. He's going to have a slide presentation, which people in person would have a good view of, but people on Zoom, I will turn the camera towards our PowerPoint presentation, which you might not see so well, but every attendee will have this attached and emailed back to you, so you can review it at home, as there's going to be a lot of information that Doug is sharing. Throughout the meeting, the questions will be taken when we get to the Q&A section. For those joining us on Zoom, there is the chat box function. Please put your comments in there. At some point during the meeting, if you have trouble with audio, please type it in there. We do have staff monitoring that this evening to make sure that everyone has as good of experience as we can as we navigate the virtual and in-person together. Let's see. I think we're good. I think I've covered off all my essential to-dos. And when we do get to questions and answers, I will try to do one question in person, one question online, and we'll just try to share time going back and forth. Tara, could you turn the light bank off? So as I said, we're going to start with Mr. McRae. Our London police representative is on his way back from Ottawa to join us this evening. So if he is not here, he's supposed to be our next speaker. If he's not here, we have Scott from Parks and Recreation, who's a manager in that department, and we will just go to the next section until the police come. So it's going to go with Mr. McRae's presentation and then a Q&A section. Is there any questions from anybody about the procedure in person or online before we get started? Okay, we're good. And like I said, for those friends online tonight, if you have questions as we go, please put them in, as myself and staff will be monitoring it. Doug, your mic is next to you if you want to have control of that one.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Perfect.
Okay. Just wave your hand if you can't hear me. Hopefully this is working okay. So yeah, transportation and mobility is the team that I am on and represent tonight. And I'll just quickly run through the three topics you see on the slide there: road safety, upcoming construction projects, and the mobility master plan, which is an undertaking that we're just getting started on. I will say also that it's good to see everybody in person. So road safety is really been at one of our core strategies since about 2013, at which time we created and it was actually the province's first road safety strategy. And we've pulled together people from a lot of different disciplines to create this strategy, implementing programs that roll out of it, programs from an educational perspective, engineering, so road design, and also enforcement, which are partners with London Police help us with also. The Vision Zero is our tagline, and that the vision is a transportation system where nobody is hurt or killed. And so that is the long-term goal and what we're working towards.
Oh, wait a minute.
But I'll just touch on some of the initiatives that are underway. One is area speed limits. And this is enabled by a recent change to provincial legislation, in that previously the default speed limit for areas had to be 50 kilometers per hour. So the province changed that. They said the municipality can make it what we want. So we're changing all residential areas across the city down to 40, and doing this on an area by area basis. So that an example is shown on the slide whereby the area is bounded by arterial roads. We'll have 40-kilometer signs as drivers enter the area, and these apply to all streets in the area. So that with the goal of making more livable, walkable, friendly neighborhoods. The timeline, we're approximately halfway through the city, and we'll complete that probably by the end of next year, just due to the amount of signage and bylaw changes that are required. Automated speed enforcement is another relatively new program. Again, enabled by provincial changes that allow municipalities to enforce speed limits in school zones by photo radar. So the City of London has procured 2 cameras, and we have a lot of school zones, so we're going to rotate them. They're mobile, and they're going to be located around. Okay, sorry. Yes. So they're going to be rotated around school zones across the city, and we're picking school zones using the speed data that we've measured. So where we know there's speeding concerns, that's where we're targeting. And the program is has safety at its core, and so it's data driven, and it's also there's a big awareness piece whereby we've been very forthcoming. We've tried to make the program very well known, and anytime a camera shows up on the side of the street, there will have been signs posted probably 3 months in advance, and they remain there while the camera is operational. So we just trying to encourage better speed compliance and for drivers to slow down in school zones. These are some of the other programs that we've undertaken in recent years, trying to raise awareness about pedestrian crossovers, and again, new provincial laws that require drivers to stop and provide the right of way to pedestrians wherever those white signs tell drivers they must stop. We have a red light camera program. There's a couple of those in the area of Ward 12, the 1 meter passing distance. So lots of communication, and we track the data closely. This graph represents the number of severe collisions. So this is any collision that has resulted in injury or fatality, and it's normalized by population. So it's more the line there to watch. And so we're seeing a positive trend. We're making progress since the road safety strategy was finalized in 2014. We've seen a drop of about 40% in collisions. So some positive there, but we recognize that there's still a lot of work to do. There's still obviously way too many collisions, and so that continues to be a focus. And we continue to stay current with best practices, and we're always looking for new ideas to make our roads safer. Okay, on to my next theme, construction projects. So I'll describe quickly some of the construction projects that you can expect to see in the coming year. The first of which, it's first because it's right in Ward 12. It's Rideout Street and Commissioners Road intersection improvements. So this will make the bike lanes on Rideout Street and Upper Queen Street continuous. Those bike lanes were constructed several years ago, and at the time, the funding wasn't available to undertake the improvements through the intersection. So it was always identified as a future phase that we'd come back to. So Council has provided more substantial funding for active transportation, and so the time is now for us to fill that gap. And so that the construction will occur this summer, and we're going to implement what's called a protected intersection, which is a new type of design. Some heavy rain. So protected intersection, there's one of these at Dundas and Colburn Street. It has unique little islands at each corner. And what those do is they they tend to slow drivers down that are making turns. And they also position the car and pedestrians and cyclists such that the driver has a better sight line. And so the pedestrians and cyclists are more visible. So this map, this drawing shows what that intersection will look like. Looking beyond Ward 12 across the city, the next two projects to build out the rapid transit network are going to be starting soon. The one on the left is the second phase of the downtown loop, which is predominantly on Queens Ave and Rideout Street in the downtown. And the other project is the East London Link, which is on King Street, extending easterly from Wellington. A little closer to Ward 12 is the Victoria Bridge replacement. This is the replacement of the bridge that takes Rideout Street over the south branch of the Thames River. So that old bridge, hope you can still bounce.
And just yell.
Oh, okay, I'll keep yelling. Try to drown out the thunder. So the existing Victoria Bridge is almost 100 years old. And actually the center pier is 140 years old. So it's lived a good life, but it's now currently requires a lot of maintenance. And it also creates a constraint in the Rideout Street corridor. So it's being replaced with a bridge that'll be a little bit wider. So we'll have more comfortable sidewalk walking areas. It's going to have a multi-use path connection to better connect from the Thames Valley Parkway on the north to Thames Park on the south. And
Just try to make it louder.
I can't compete with Mother Nature, really. Yeah. And the bridge will be a little bit longer. So the Thames Valley Parkway goes underneath the bridge. And right now it's quite constrained. The sight lines aren't great. And so that'll be much improved with the Snake Bridge. So as far as construction impacts go, Rideout Street will be closed. The old bridge needs to be removed. A new bridge along the design, with the design along the lines of what we're seeing on the slide, will be implemented, but that'll take approximately a year to complete. And there will be a temporary pedestrian bridge on the west side of where the existing bridge currently sits, so that walkers and cyclists can continue to use that corridor. Improvements to Southdale Road West are occurring. So this is in the area of the Boston Community Center. And that'll provide a 4-lane complete street cross section with new sidewalks, new bike paths, and better accommodate that rapidly growing area. Looking forward to next year, so this next couple of projects are in design, but they won't be constructed until likely 2023. One is improvements to sort of an old section of White Oak Road just south of Exeter. And it'll reconstruct that section of road. It'll create a sidewalk connection down to Blakey, that industrial area to the west. It'll also fill a gap in the bike lane corridor north and south. And it'll also extend a new sidewalk over to where sidewalks currently terminate on Exeter Road further east. It's showing. So that's in design and just also projected out on the north end of White Oak Road, where it turns into Homeview, north of Southdale Road. We're currently assessing extending those bike lanes north of Southdale up to Ferndale. Another project that's in design for likely implementation next year is new bike paths in the Bradley Avenue Boulevard. So for most of the block between White Oak Road and Wellington, we implement bike paths through there.
Can you just mention where the Bradley extensions are?
The Bradley extension from White Oak Road to Warncliffe is currently in design, and put me on the spot. I'd have to check. It's an active project. It's near term, and I'm drawing a blank on the exact implementation.
The property acquisitions are done.
Property acquisition underway, active design project, a lot of environmental work required, and it is progressing. Okay, and then my last of three topics is the mobility master plan. So what this is for all of our infrastructure systems, we do master planning processes, which about once a decade, we take a long-term look. So we look out 20, 30 years maybe to plan what we should be focusing on and planning for as far as infrastructure, supportive policies, programs. And so this mobility master plan will replace the Smart Moves Transportation Master Plan that was finalized in 2013. And it's the, out of that plan came a lot of the road improvements, for example, Bradley Avenue, also the rapid transit system, and a lot of our major initiatives. So we're just getting started. Council has endorsed the draft vision statement. If I could sort of highlight the three themes that are paramount coming out from this study. The one is the environment, and that council has declared a climate emergency, and there is a we know that transportation is a major part of that. So there's environment. Next theme would be equity. We know that all Londoners don't have the same means and abilities from a physical standpoint, financial standpoint. A lot of different perspectives, a lot of different ways people get around the city. We need to support them all, and that's important. And then the final one is economy. We know that the city is growing rapidly. The recently reduced census data has proven that out. And transportation and mobility is a key aspect of supporting the ongoing growth of the city. So here's some facts. Some of this is from pre-pandemic, so perhaps a little bit dated, but it was a major survey that we did that guides some of what we do. And we're under this study, we're going to be looking to update some of this data. But in general, Londoners make 3 to 4 trips a day. Average trip distances range from about 4 kilometers for someone going to school to 9 kilometers for someone going to work. We do know that the census has told us that our population is growing quite rapidly. It's grown 10% in the last 5 years. And what we also know is that our vehicle population is growing as well. It's actually growing faster, and we currently have a vehicle for almost every adult in the city. And those vehicles generate more than a third of our greenhouse gas emissions, so hence the link to the climate emergency action plan. And then finally, as far as that economic piece, there's been a recent report done by PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, on London's low labor market participation. And one of the factors that it highlighted out of that report was that transportation is a barrier for many people to get to employment. So that's an important piece that we want to dig into and see if we can develop solutions for that. So these are our current priorities. The term mobility master plan is a distinct transition away from the previous plan that was called transportation master plan. It aims to more enabling movement as opposed to providing a service. It's a little more holistic and forward thinking and integrating all modes. Just touch on a few of these. Council has identified in its strategic plan, creating a safer city for women and girls, and transportation and transit specifically is a consideration there. Making the city more accessible for people with disabilities, improving access to daily needs. So that could be jobs, that could be people getting groceries, people getting healthcare services and whatnot, and keeping that all affordable. Council has also endorsed these draft guiding principles, and we will be rolling out some different consultation and engagement opportunities in the next couple of months, where we'll be asking questions about your thoughts on the transportation system, how you get around, and that'll inform these guiding principles further, and these will essentially form the decision-making of the master plan and further discussions with council. So rough schedule here, a lot of detail, but I'll sum it up and say that it's essentially a 2-year process. So we're just getting started, and the first phase is exploring, getting input from Londoners. Second phase is when we'll start to develop alternatives and evaluate them. And the phase 3 is to get endorsement from council and really put pen to paper and finalize it into a report full of actions that we can implement over the next 20 to 25 years. It's a broad team, it's a diverse topic, and incorporates everything from public health to land use. We also have members of the Transit Commission and health unit on our team. So I represent a lot of people here tonight, but we'll have a website on our Get Involved portal, and there's some contact information there if you want to get in touch directly with the project team. So with that, I'm wrapping it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McRae, for that presentation. And once again, everyone will get your lovely slide deck after the meeting. And for everyone, Doug is the only one who came with the slide deck this evening and has raised the bar for anyone. He is raising his arms and cheering for himself, shamelessly, for those who can't see. I did fail to recognize a few other people in attendance today. Virtually, we have MP Lindsay Matheson joining us, and School Board Trustee Sherry Colehale. In person, we have Lori Ann Pizzolatto, who's our School Board Trustee for our area and the Chair of the Thames Valley District School Board. I'm going to single you out if you want to wave. She is waving beautifully for anyone not in person. We also have Councillor Stephen Hillier at the back of the room. He likes being haggled a lot. He takes care of the other side of Warncliffe or Wellington Road. So we do end up doing a lot of partnerships on things with community interests. And everyone else was invited, but it's a busy time of year and everyone's busy and some couldn't be joining us, but they will also have access to this information tonight. I will just say some people sent in questions in advance that had to do with school board, school parking lot issues. Sometimes it's things congregating that happens in school board parking lots, requests for better parent drop off at the school so they block up some community streets. Anything like that that comes into my office, Lorianne gets to tag team those with me because that's school board property, not mine. But definitely some schools like White Oaks Public School wanted no U-turns made in front of it to help parents get in and out, and that was on city property in the boulevard, and we were able to put up signs to help with that and work as partners because it takes everyone to service Londoners. So I'm going to stick to trying to rotate between a question in person and a question online. Doug, I know the answer to this one, but I don't know if you do. Is there any plans to install an advanced screen on Warncliffe at Ferndale and Belmont?
Now you're really putting me on the spot. I would have to check with my team that manages the signal system. We do evaluate advanced screen signals carefully because at every intersection, we want to provide as much time for all moves as we can, right? And there's only so much time to go around. And an advanced green phase is worthwhile if there is a high demand, and so we will specifically measure that. But providing that takes away time away from the other phases. So it means there's less time for the through traffic on the road, and actually that tends to be higher volumes of traffic. So it just increases congestion at the intersection. Now I'm speaking in generalities, not with respect to that intersection, but just providing some of the thought process that goes around and why we scrutinize and analyze and take every one of those requests seriously, and the thought process that goes around being through.
Any plans for putting advanced lights at Southdale westbound turning left to White Oaks Road, as well as Homeview to Southdale eastbound?
So we can, again, I can take those away and we can assess them and see what the demand of the left turn is. We tend to look at how many cars, how many drivers are delayed from the first cycle and through to the second and third cycles. And that's how we evaluate, in addition to what the congestion levels at the intersection are. And if there's timing available from other phases, or if we're really maxed out, and it's a matter of, creating congestion, really, it's a trade-off. Perfect.
Traditionally, we'd have an MP here with us if we have any federal concerns. So MP Matheson is online. I'm going to ask Lindsay to drop her personal contact information in. And it's always in my newsletter, so if you want to find her, you can find her directly. And if you can't, it comes to me, and I'm just the middle lady, and I pass it along. So I'll leave that with there. Doug, was there any questions? Okay. Okay. So residents in the room are going to say their question, and staff, and Doug being great, is going to make their question part of his answer for people online can hear it, and I don't have to repeat it, so we save time. We're good? Okay.
In your pie chart, you mentioned how many cars are using for deployment? Like 200,000, whatever. Thank you. Do you know how many bikers are out there, bicycle riders? You have a rough idea? I thought it was a small percentage.
Yeah, so the question was how many cars, so a couple of questions. Do we know how many bicycles there are?
We have a lot of bike lanes being built. My question really is, are they being used? And that's why we're continuing. I know we're trying to encourage that. That's different from car rides, right?
Yeah, so we unlike vehicles, we don't know the number of bikes because they're not registered. But what we do is we count the number of cyclists in bike lanes at different locations, and we do have some counters at different spots around the city. And there's on our website, if you go to our cycling webpage, there's a spot there where you can access that information. And it's actually the counters provide daily counts, like as current as yesterday. And so there's some of those on, there's one on the Ride Out corridor, there's one on the New Dundas bike lanes, Colburn, Cheapside, East, and they provide that data. Typically on like on the new Dundas bike lanes, we see in the order of a typical number of maybe 300 cyclists in a day. That's sort of an average number.
I don't see a lot in my area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's one of those mobility choices that we hear that a lot of people would do it more if they felt more safe, and that's part of the rationale behind building the infrastructure the way we are these days, both on street and also with my colleagues in Parks and Recreation with the pathways, and trying to make it more comfortable based on Londoners telling us that they would more if the infrastructure was better.
Okay, a resident had wrote in asking about if there's any plans for traffic calming on Montgomery. And staff already told me not at this time, so I will just.
Yeah, we hadn't received that request, so there was no action. Typically, there's a process associated with that, and if there's enough interest, we'll measure. That's it. Montgomery is a unique corridor, so it's very much it's one of the commercial corridor, and so it wasn't on our radar. It wasn't really in our databases having any requests, so there wasn't currently action.
I tend to put it in my newsletters to residents, but can you tell us if a resident did believe they had a street in their area that should have traffic coming on it? What is the process, or where would they find that information on the city's website?
Yeah, if you type traffic calming into the search bar on the city website, it'll explain the process. And in order to, the traffic calming is very much a community-driven thing, and it's because it can be loved by some and hated by others, and so we tend to want to try to, if we're going to make changes, want to gauge whether there's support in the neighborhood. So one of the first steps is getting the signatures of 10 residents to ask to initiate a study, and then from there we go and we evaluate whether there is in fact a speeding problem, what potential solutions there are, and then before anything gets implemented, we circle back to the neighborhood and then see what the level of support is. I say all that with the exception of school zones. School zones skip that process, and they're actually our priority for traffic calming, and that we're proactively going around every school zone throughout the city to try to support those 40 kilometers school zone speed limits and improve safety in those areas.
Okay, thank you. Looking for another question. Perfect. Those in person, there's traffic calming petition information things at the back if you want to grab some on your way out. Lady in the lovely purple, just speak loudly over the ring.
Yeah, we can certainly review that. The pedestrian push buttons are there for a couple of reasons. One is so that we know if a pedestrian needs enough time to get across, that's provided. And then there's other aspects around like accessibility for visually impaired. The new ones that we implement have the beeping with the audible sounds help the visually impaired across. We do at times, so there's provincial guidelines around how much time is provided to get across the road, and the walking speed is assumed that it's used in that calculation, and we tend to use a slower walking speed to try to accommodate Londoners of all ages. So it sounds like maybe there's a couple of different aspects, if I'm understanding what you're hearing correctly, so that we can review those intersections around them all.
Yeah, so for those online, the question was specifically about the pedestrian crossing signals. Those we use active transportation tend to call them beg buttons, that you have to beg for an opportunity to cross the road and hit that button in time. The resident has identified several intersections around the mall, and she's going to drop it in an email to me so we can follow up with Mr. McRae and track that down. Doug, is there any intersections that have certain hours that just have a high pedestrian usage rate of intersections that automatically give a walk sign, or is it always defaults to you have to push a button?
Most of the intersections in the downtown automatically have the walk symbol come up. They still have push buttons because that is a requirement of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, again, because of the visually impaired aspect. But yeah, those ones in the downtown core, recognizing the pedestrian volumes that are there automatically have that pedestrian phase. The ones outside, more in the suburban areas, it really, again, it comes down to those trade-offs of providing time to the various modes and just trying to make the intersection operate as efficiently as possible. So part of our evaluation would be looking at how many pedestrians are using the signals. We do have a new signals like an upgrade for our signals system currently underway, and our new system will be able to help us manage issues like this much better than we have in the past.
Perfect, thank you. And I believe, did you have a question?
I did.
You did.
It may fall in your territory or not. There's two issues. One, and I kind of letters to get. I use my water, take public transit. But these sidewalks are horrendous in the winter time. We do nothing. The first time it's came, right from the sidewalk. But people have seen these old streets during the sidewalk, and it's, you know, it's not even, oh, the only way you know it's on by is like the trend marks. And some places don't get done at all. And so people are fine on the road, even people at my age, mobile, wherever they go.
So is the question about, so we have someone in the audience with a mobility device and asking about clearing of sidewalks in the winter, recognizing, especially this last winter seemed horrendous of ice. We did have a snow event. Doug, do you want that one or?
I certainly hear your concern, and the winter is hard, so I am responsible for winter road maintenance. And to the current council's credit, they have increased the funding for sidewalk snow plowing. So in this past winter, we actually implemented more snow plowing of sidewalks and salting and sanding than we have in previous years. I see you shaking your head. It's probably not visible. It's really hard to, again, fighting Mother Nature. But suffice to say that we did deploy a lot more sidewalk units, but it is hard to get it down to bare pavement. So we're always looking for ways to improve that service. But, you're not the first person to share this concern. It's something we remain focused on, and it's going to be part of our mobility to evaluate that further. We want people to get around by walking, and that's part of the picture.
Okay.
It seems downtown generally is so much better than the city. Higher out whatever. I know.
Yeah, so I'm going to interrupt at this point. Never sorry. If anyone's only here to hear from the London Police, they've been held up with the weather and they're not going to make it here. Oh, you're not here. Okay, it's okay. I don't need you at this moment for respecting your time. Sorry. I didn't see you come in. I'm used to them coming in full uniform. So we're going to take, I think I saw 4 more hands. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, and then you said you had a second one, and then Lori Ann can always say what she wants because she's Lori Ann. So I'm just going to ask you to keep your questions really specific, and Doug always gives too much information, which is one of the reasons I love and appreciate him, but he's going to be really concise tonight.
Talking too long.
And anyone who still has a question, as always, drop it in an email and Doug will get back to you, and especially sometimes when it is already written, it's easy for the office to track it to make sure that you've got an answer. Follow-up question?
Yeah, it might be better if I told you
Perfect, yeah, phone, and Doug's available by phone too. And anyone who phones into our office, we do have admin staff. Some of you who've come out before have met Lyra Donna in the corner. She's in charge currently of everybody in our office, me too. She laughs, but it's true. I do what she says and I stay out of trouble. And Tara is new to our office, so sometimes when you call in, she'll answer the phone as well. Sir, you had a question.
Commissioners to change. Across the street is the blind disabled child. The only way the parents can take them to school. Drive down 7 8 explodes everything. We don't have no speed limits on there. It's 40. Is there any way that this disabled blind child can have some kind of sign so that people don't see past the house?
And is there just, so we're talking about Huntington Drive and there's a blind and disabled child on that street. And I think there's only sidewalks on one side.
There's only sidewalks on the other side.
On one street. So the question for Doug is what to help this family, recognizing there's going to be construction and maybe potentially more cut through traffic as you rebuild for Queen Street intersection. I think there's a sign in that area as well to warn people of a disabled child.
And then it's school right around the corner. So that kids running way up and down as well. It's a very dangerous situation. It's gotten worse over time. I've lived there for 64 years. But nobody does it.
Doug, your briefest answer, recognizing this one is going to be noted as well for the office to follow up on.
Yeah, I'd like to commit to following up on that. That sounds like a pretty complex situation. Signs tend not to get a lot of change from drivers often, so we'd like, yeah. That's what I'd like to have my team look at the area, look at the context. I was going to ask you the sidewalk. Sounds like.
And there's no street lights either. It's all the coach lights.
Okay. So yeah, we can look at a few different solutions there.
Is there something that's family?
Doug will follow up offline as this is a specific family and I live in the area, so I'm familiar with it. And Lyra Dawn's gonna make me a note to make sure so thank you that I did not know that family was there. I'm happy to help them. There was a lady and a gentleman next to Goss.
And that was about 2 years ago. I don't know what happened to we were thankful for attention, but the rumor was going around that the stretch that squashing the one moving to we've had a number of accidents on the building. The second part is Secretary Laurier walking over something that she done. Kids are not watching. And are just
They're on taking notes like a lot of these issues. I'll need to follow up on. It is possible that it was delayed because of COVID, so traffic volumes have been down significantly, and that's part of the evaluation to see if routes are through route. So it's possible that it's been delayed by that. I'm speculating, so I'd have to dig into it. Mm-hmm. And high school students crossing the assess whether, for example, if a pedestrian crossover is appropriate. Now, whether the students cross there, again, it's a pretty specific situation.
And the other school issues too. We have Lorianne who could be work as a facilitator in between those. Tara, you just make sure that this gets a form. We can follow up on where that the traffic petition is for Millbank. Okay. I think 2 last questions for me, super brief. We are taking up the services time. Lorianne, did you want to go ahead with Lorianne's passed up hers to help facilitate? Did you have a really quick one?
when did the city, diagram. My question is, all these pedestrian access, but if you're built city, is there maybe a good year that we should bring forward council to start maybe right now? That's very almost got run over themselves. That's the point that I have walk side. The driver decided they like right. So question was what
Perfect. Thank you. Doug, a brief reply to, or anyone really, it's a question tying in climate emergency plan, which the city's announced, active transportation, and right turns. And I know the cities, as we rebuild the intersections, we're eliminating slip lanes, which are very dangerous for pedestrians. Anything specifically to add on to?
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, we're getting rid of the those channelized right turn lanes where the drivers don't have to stop at all. These protected intersection designs are also a benefit. And as far as implementing no right on red, it is something that we've considered. I can't remind examples, but we have implemented that, and it's part of our toolbox of solutions when we analyze specific locations and see that there's a type of collision that can be mitigated or reduced. Good point. Thanks.
Thank you. At this time, I will release Doug from the front. Thank you as always. And absolutely, when you send in your questions in an email, if you just say permission to share with the appropriate staff, it helps us facilitate it and go faster, knowing that we can share your contact information. And Doug or whoever the appropriate staff person is will be copied on it, and we can track and answer together. At this time, I would like to thank Doug as always, and I would like to invite Sergeant Nethersoul up. Grateful for his time as he was in a conference in Ottawa and came back just for us, as you were all going to be stuck with me this evening. Perfect. I don't know if you want to stand here, just people online are watching. I will give you the mic. So we have half people in the room, half online. If you could just give a brief overview, as many people, we've always been very blessed with having representation from London Police Services coming to us in person and telling us just what's happening in the neighborhood, how to connect with them. Residents in the past wanted to know why they don't see police officers, in which case in past meetings we were told half the cars are unmarked and we're not always supposed to see them. So just an overview like that, and what's changed with the core area action unit in our area of White Oaks. We have a special file. And then I can manage. Are you
talking about the core unit, or when you say core unit in this?
We had a special file a couple of years ago. An issue happened on Rennie Crescent with residents, and we had some extra assistance from police and telling us that if there's an issue, we're not to take care of ourselves. We are to call for help. If there's people in your backyard, do not confront them, call for help. So I'll let you introduce yourself and any key messaging you have, and then you can run Q&A from the audience, or I can, do your choice.
All right, thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? All right, so I'll give you just a little background on myself. Good enough? All right, so I'll give you a little background on myself. My name is Ozzy Nethersoul. This is great for me to be here, and I'm so happy to be here tonight. I went to St. Anthony's Elementary School, went to Sir Arthur Carty, so these are my stomping grounds. So I'm very happy to be here tonight. Whatever questions, I'll hold those to the end, but I want everyone, the reason I came tonight is you have to ask me things and I will give you the truth and I will give you exactly what I can do for you as the police. Because a lot of times there's misconception of what we can do, but we also have resource restraints. So I came from community service, and all the things that Elizabeth's talking about, the community problems that you would have in the relation that we would make with police, that's what I did as a supervisor before. As everyone knows now, the school officers have been removed from the schools. That's what I was in charge of. I was also responsible for auxiliary officers, which we still have. So within December 13th, I went over to the traffic unit. And so a lot of things I'm hearing today are things that can probably help you with some of these things. But, and I know Doug quite well because we're on some committees together, it comes back to resources again. So we have to be smart in how we go about some of these things. I know a lot of things that we bring up is always about enforcement, but it's not always enforcement. We're gonna have to do some education, but we just don't have enough officers out there to always do enforcement. The gentleman brought up was something that I thought was quite interesting. Well, what if you make a rule about no right-hand turns? You can make up as many laws as you can. People will continue to break them. You have to be honest with yourself. There's people that will just speed because we get a lot of speeders. There's people that go blowing through school bus stop signs that are out there. These things continue to happen. So me in my new role as a traffic supervisor, I'm trying to get all my officers up to speed, get more officers in my office, and try to get out there and do as much enforcement as we can. But it's first of all, it's going to start with education. We have to get everyone educated in how to be courteous with each other. You shouldn't be worried about crossing the road and some car making a right-hand turn. You shouldn't be. The people on the roadway that are out there should be courteous enough to give you the time to cross the road. Am I right or am I wrong? Right? Because that's the way it needs to be, because we just can't be everywhere. The number one problem I would say right now in this city, for me as a traffic supervisor, is speeding. I would say maybe because the last 2 years, because of COVID, the speeds have gone up so much that now we're using, under the Highways Traffic Act, the stunt driving legislation, where people are getting their cars impounded at the scene on the side of the road for 14 days, and drivers are getting suspended for 30 days, automatic, before you can go to court. Because that's how excessive the speeds are throughout the city. So that's not a problem just in this area, it's a problem throughout the city. The other problem that we're having is impaired drivers, but not so much by alcohol anymore, it's impaired by drugs. So we get so many calls throughout the night, so not just my unit, but the uniform officers are just running ragged, because you will have people just falling asleep at intersections, falling asleep in parking lots because they're impaired by drugs. For us to do, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to be transparent, for us to do an impaired, it takes at least good 5 hours to 6 hours, because it's so much time and energy and paperwork that goes into it. It's very time consuming. So when you have these things going across the city, and there's so many people doing these things now, for whatever reason, it's hard to keep up with it. So we try our best to get to the impaired drivers because we don't want them on the road. So now they get, someone's crossing the road. Now someone gets injured, and that's where my officers get called again, because our officers do all the recons for the cities for all the serious motor vehicle collisions and fatalities. So I have a group of officers. So anything major that comes across where there's a pedestrian or a serious motor vehicle collision, my officers are the ones that respond to that, and we're the ones that get called out. So when you see the roads locked down, we're the ones that are reconstructing the scene, and those are the officers that I'm responsible for. So I can keep going on, and I know we're pretty limited on time, but I want you to tell me what you want, because as the police, I know what we're always shooting for, but it might not be the connect that you or whatever concerns you have might not be the same. So I know what my mandate is, and I know what my goals are in the city, but what do you want from the police? And I will tell you what I can provide for you and how I can assist, especially in this area around here. Because I will be talking to this group maybe tonight. Maybe there's another group in the east end, the north, the west. You all have the same problems, but this area specifically, there might be something unique to this area that I don't know about. And if you don't tell me, I just won't know about it. Elizabeth's quite good. I'm gonna tell you right now, and she's gonna keep laughing. She's probably my number one person, so I had to be here tonight. All right? She wasn't gonna make me not be here tonight. But that's good, because it shows how much she cares for the constituency and the people in the area. So that's good. So you want somebody that's working hard for you. And that's why I went over to the traffic unit. I want to work hard for everyone in the city. So I'm up early in the morning, I go home late. See, I was up early in the morning. My shift usually finishes at 3 p.m., but it's worthwhile for me to be down here tonight, because it's important to all the people that came out tonight, because they want to live in a safe city. They want to be able to cross the roads and not worry about these kind of things. So if you have some questions, please ask tonight. If I don't have the answer tonight, I will get it back to you. I will get back to you and give you the answer that you need.
you are aware that Southdale is a breakers most Friday and Saturday nights.
I know that Southdale is a problem, because Elizabeth didn't know it was a problem, right? So I like that. So that's one of my problem areas. So I have an officer assigned to Southdale right now, and we have teams of officers. So I'll tell you how it works for us. Because a lot of times, I'm not sure how the meetings have went before with, when the officers came to talk to you. I like for you to understand why we do things. So with the officers that I have in my area, we have sectors. And so for each sector, there's 7 throughout the city. We have different traffic officers responsible for that. So I assign them to a sector. So down in your area, there's 2 officers that are assigned to that. So when I get the complaints coming in, I reassign it to them and say, hey, by the way, I got a complaint on Southdale Road. The speeds are excessive, getting a lot of complaints about that. We need to go down, monitor it, see exactly what's going on. If it gets to the point where I'm like, yeah, there's a problem down here, we're gonna need to do some enforcement. So I'll bring my resources down, get the other officers, we will go down and take care of that. I came up personally last week because that was such a problem. So I had to jump in a car last week. I was down on Southdale, it's a problem. So we'll try to slow them down the best we can.
It's in the middle of the night.
Yeah, well, it's not just the middle of the night, it's throughout the day also. So I'm gonna be honest with you, it's not just the middle of the night, it's quite busy throughout the day, and the speeds are excessive. Okay.
I live on Reddit, and of course there's a park, it's enormous. And the lady up here mentioned how there's always that kind of grid. So the police actually look at possibly, like, the city as well, that's what the fire law. Because let's say about, you know, motor, sports cars on the street, they use sure it's here, it's all.
Right.
And they do it aggressively.
So we don't pass specific laws for specific things. So I always think big picture. So what we do is, and it's gonna come up probably in another month or so, we do the loud mufflers throughout the city. And we get our officers and we try to get some officers from the road also, from different sections. And we'll go throughout the city. So again, if Southdale is that bad for speeding, it's probably an area that will probably be down also for mufflers. So we do run different projects throughout the area.
My backyard is on a Commissioner Road. That's the corridor between Huntington and North, which is a 100% residential street. No commercial entrances. Sound levels there are low. I'm regularly measuring 100 decibels. That's 150 feet. I'm not talking about regular traffic. That would be ridiculous if somebody Commissioner's Road to compare it, right? Talking about open throat mufflers, motorcycles, cars, racing. I have no sports car, I love cars.
Right.
But it is not bearable. And is it possible that the city could study that sort of the sound stuff? Because it's part of the speeding issue that I didn't know that. I'm talking about this.
Right.
But it is ridiculous. I shouldn't hear 100 decibels in my background. In any other neighborhood, now. In the other neighborhood, we would have put sound barriers up along there to cut the sound.
Right.
It is ridiculous, and it's only a basic. These are people. These are not people that are driving. People that are doing it.
Right.
I would never complain about just general traffic.
Right.
It's a busy street. Something else is going on here.
Right, and things like that. I'm on a couple committees in relation to traffic throughout the cities, and those are the kind of things that we bring to the committees and we discuss. The enforcement part, same thing for the muffler, whatever vehicles are going across there, that my unit can take care of. The other things that something like that would need more for study, so those are things we'd have to bring to committees to look at those, like the specific concern that you have.
There's no plan to study.
There's no plan right now to study. That would have to be a simple concern that you would have to bring forward. I know it's a concern now, and we would have to bring it to a certain committee to look at that. And to be honest, like Commissioner's Road is a very busy road for me. That's not one of my main streets, but if you're telling me right now it's a big problem, we can make it one of our main streets. Because I get a lot of people coming to, yeah, right. Right.
It's purpose. It's purpose.
It's just cutting your motor up and down.
Right. So he's talking more about noise.
Yeah,
thinking
the
that's
traffic
what, yeah.
And the loud mufflers, they love the muffler bliss.
Just do me a favor, the Instagram, for anybody who knows Facebook on Instagram.
Right.
You see the pictures of the police stopping the people on Oxford Street, Highbury, showing the bar, whatever. Show us something that they're policing Southdale or anywhere or in this area, because I think we're all hearing the speeding, but
Right.
we're not seeing the enforcement.
Right.
Which I'm seeing. You hear about all the other, or the others, you see the posted,
Good.
but.
And that's fair enough. Right now, we're focusing on Oxford Street because it's such a problem from east to west. That's our biggest problem right now, like streetwise. But yes, we can bring them down here and you will see our officers. If we get a vehicle down on Southdale, no problem. I have a couple officers that are really savvy with social media. So they'd have no problems coming out here and you say, oh, by the way, on Southdale Road, we stopped them doing this speed. They have no problem.
There's no one stopping for anybody, they can't show.
Great. Yeah, that's no problem. That's something that we definitely can do. Good, how are you?
Just have a little way that really make it this way, so that somebody at least if you're walking or riding bicycle, like for section goes in 5 months. One area.
And that's a good question. Unfortunately, that's not something that I focus on because that'd be more the transportation department when you're talking to alters, streets. So we really is the Highway Traffic Act and Criminal Code where we do it and we get our leads from complaints and that's how we kind of generate what we go throughout the days. So something like that would be more, again, on one of the committees I'd be on with the transportation department. Those are things that we bring forward to those committees. But for my officers going out on a daily basis, that's not something that we would look at directly. That would not be one of our prime concerns in all terrain times or roads. That's not what we do in my unit. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we have time for 1 or 2 more questions, and then I do have one online that I'll read for you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions before I ask a couple online questions? Okay. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How are you?
I'm very good tonight. How are you? Thank you
Good.
for coming back.
No problem.
So a couple residents have asked the question. There's been a couple of serious accidents at Glanworth and Wonderland. Part of that I've been involved with, as Doug is also aware of it. Municipal staff is working to make some improvements. We are aware of the issue. So I'll do a broader question of when there's high impact or fatality at intersections and they may or may not be a problem. Do you do extra enforcements in that area or could a person ask for extra enforcement?
That intersection you're talking about specifically, that was brought to my attention last week. And a lot of people are concerned about that intersection to the point where one of our officers on the road, he brought it to me. And he works out in that area and that's his sector. And he's not the person that comes into my office and is like, hey, there's not a lot of collisions here, but when they have occurred, they're devastating. There's such speeds that it's going to be a major collision and there's probably likely going to be a fatality. So that one is on our radar for sure. So that intersection, we will be doing enforcement there.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer and recognizing Mr. McCrae is here with transportation and I'm aware of it and Councillor Hopkins takes care of the other side of the street. And as councillors, we're working together too. It's going to take everyone to help keep Londoners safe. Did you have anything else in general you want to add? There's a few core questions in here and people asking about IDs and pressing charges, which is not
Right.
what you do. So we're not going to do those questions. Is there anything else? We love muffler blitzes.
Right.
They're very successful in White Oaks area. Is there anything else you'd have us know tonight, or any advice to leave us with of
Right.
how to report or what you want us to do?
Nope, so I'm new to this unit and I've only been in the unit for 3 months, so I'm getting all my officers up to speed. So what I like to do is I like doing education first, because I just don't like going out and writing tickets to people. And the example I always use, I was a police officer in Toronto for 8 years. And so when community members like this would ask, hey, there's a lot of speeders in our community, you got to come out and do enforcement. I always say, be careful, look big picture. Because from my experiences, a lot of times when we come down and we start doing blitzes in the area, it's the residents in the area that we usually catch. So I don't know if that makes sense to you or not. So when we come down and we come down for a week or two and we do some blitzes, it's, I would say, a good number of the people we get live in that area. So what I like to do is, let's just educate everyone first through this area, throughout this city. And if it comes to it, then we'll have to do some enforcement for the people that just don't want to listen. And that's how, like, same thing, we're gonna get everybody up to speed. We want everyone to be safe in the city, and we want everyone to be able to cross the road, drive down the street, be able to sit in their backyard peacefully without mufflers and all these things. We just gotta get back to some good living where we all respect and get along with each other.
And maybe social media would be a good way to educate.
Don't worry, the young guys are trying to get me up to date with social media. And I got some young girls at home, because I live in girl world at home. They're trying to get me up to speed with this stuff, so. Right.
Like I watched today, I was waiting for like a car. 2 women are crossing the road, they're having a conversation, and they're walking like 0 miles an hour.
Right.
And traffic's trying to move me, they're not going. It's like, it's not just the one group, it's everything. What is allowed outside, bicycles, motor scooters.
I'm gonna say something to you. Exactly what I just said is exactly what I want right there. You gotta take responsibility for yourself, and you gotta be smart. You gotta be educated. So if you're crossing the road, yeah, you might have the right of way. But if you walk out in front of a car, you're not paying attention, you're on your cell phone, you still get hurt. You're hurt. My team might get there, we investigate, and we might charge them, but at the end of the day, you're still hurt. It doesn't make sense. So you have to be smart. So that I really like. So when I come to your next meeting, keep bringing questions like that to me, all right? But that's what I'm saying. We all gotta be smart about this. You can't expect other people to do things for you. You gotta be watching out for each other. We'll be out there. Police will always be doing their thing. But as people in the community, you talk amongst your friends, you get on your Facebook groups, and you spread the word. Good?
Absolutely.
All right.
So thank you for your time tonight. We recognize you rushed back to be of service to our community, and thank you for that.
Oh, I didn't rush back. I gotta follow speed limit. Right?
Well
Right?
played.
I gotta be careful.
Well
on
played.
that. That's
Well
right.
played. You think it's taken on the way back, that would be embarrassing.
Yep.
So any other questions regarding speeding and other questions? The proper reporting mechanisms are always in my newsletter. And any questions specifically you want, we are Donna's happy to facilitate those to the office. And we group them when we can, just to say this is a new issue in this area, and we all get to know the areas, and we do what we can. So thank you, everyone. The next board meeting will
Actually,
be.
can I ask them one more question?
You want to
before we
ask
go?
them a question? You might get.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm gonna ask everyone this question. What do you think the #1 complaint that the police have in town? #1 complaint. You guys are all talking about it. Traffic. You see all those things on Instagram and Twitter that we put out. We put these things with seat guns and everything, but everyone always complains about traffic. Traffic's the #1 thing with us. All right, so just remember that. So be careful out there, and I'll be back another day.
Yeah, you're watching. It would just be embarrassing to have you find us after we got to meet you. So we will see you back in the spring, and we look forward to working with you before then. And thank you so much.
No problem.
A round of applause. Sorry, I didn't do that for Doug. Sorry, Doug. I'll clap for you. I know. Okay, a round of applause for Doug, 'cause now I feel it. And Doug was so excited. So our final presenter tonight is from our Parks and Forestry staff. Scott's going to give a general overview of things that are happening in our parks and our trail system throughout White Oaks and Ward 12. He's been made aware of a couple of questions that have been sent in advance or through the chat, so he's going to wrap those in too. And then we can open it up for Q&A, as we do have a little bit of time for that too. Please welcome Scott. earn that applause.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. And you're all fortunate tonight. You're getting the very abbreviated version. If we think poor Doug talks a lot, Doug and I are peers and he has to put up with me a lot. So he's going to appreciate the abbreviation tonight. As Councillor said, I'm in the Parks and Forestry area. And what we have in the Parks and Forestry area are kind of two streams in each. So we've got planning all of the parks that we have out there, and then we have the crews that maintain all of the parks, hopefully the way that the planning crew wanted them to look. So that's kind of what we have there. The planning gets involved in a variety of different ways. Doug talked about some different plans and things that we have. And, basically, we start off with a council strategic plan. So council sets out a variety of items that all of our service areas work from. And then we've got a bunch of master plans that we work on. We've got a Parks and Recreation master plan, the mobility master plan that was talked about. In our forestry area, we've got the urban forest strategy. So the forest area we have, it's very similar to parks. We've got an operations crew that gets out there during those ice storms or perhaps heavy wind and rain storms. So the ice storm that we just missed this morning in our area, fortunately. So we get out there and fix all those things up. We take care of the trees. One of the things we're doing right now is taking care of the LDD moth that's affecting our oaks and other trees. So we're out there scraping some of the egg masses and making sure we can keep those trees alive in various parts of the city. We are the forest city, a lot of pressure in the forestry world to try and keep us that way. So we do a lot to help maintain and protect the trees. And then we've got our planning side of it too, which plans where do all the new trees go? How do we work with the subdivisions and the developments? Doug and his team in the roads area. And interesting enough, with the police department, we work quite closely too in the parks world of trying to keep the parks safe in some of the areas that we run into some issues, certainly in White Oaks Park and other areas. It's not unique to White Oaks Park. But we work with the police on different techniques and ideas. And some of that is, as we try to create some of these wooded, forested, natural areas, sometimes unfortunately, they create some areas that don't allow for good activity to go on. So we have to really balance that. So you're trying to balance nature and balance growth, balance tree planting and trying to keep neighborhoods safe and recreation opportunities available as well. So that's a little bit of it in a nutshell. There's over 500 parks. There's over 185 kilometers of pathways throughout the city. 45 of those are the major Thames Valley Parkway. But another 145 as we look at various connectors. And White Oaks actually has one of the big connectors that was originally designed as a neighborhood connection. So that's one of the areas that is one of sort of the model as we move through some of the other areas in the city for parks and pathways. What else have we got here? So we have over 185 playgrounds, 200 soccer, 200 baseball. We're moving to cricket as we move into a more diverse city, and certainly in the White Oaks area and this area we're getting more demand for cricket, and we're looking at White Oaks Park as an opportunity to create some cricket opportunities there as well as the soccer and baseball that we have. We have our own city-run greenhouse, which is unique to a lot of areas where a lot of the annuals that you see throughout the city that are planted are actually produced in the winter in our greenhouses. So that's it's kind of a neat idea and a neat thing that we have, and very unique to the city as well. Some of the projects that we're working on in the White Oaks Park area, there's a few things going on. We've got a playground, not the new one over by the community center here, but the other one that's kind of out in the park by itself out there. It needs a little bit of love. It's got a few items, but we're looking to try and enhance that and give it a little bit of love this year. We've got, as I mentioned, some future cricket opportunities. We're looking at improving the tennis courts out here. They're at the stage where they need to be improved upon. We're looking at the parking lot that runs over and behind the school. That needs to be repaired as well. And we've actually worked with Doug and police and the councillor on some items there where there was a lot of gathering and high speed in that parking lot, not just on the road. So we've worked there to have some traffic calming and some speed bumps in that area through the years as well. And we're looking to redo that parking lot, and maybe some of the design as we look to redo that will help mitigate some of the speeding and gathering measures there as well. The one thing that is coming to the community too is a pavilion and just outside our doors here in the White Oaks Park. And unfortunately, like a lot of things, as Doug mentioned, COVID and construction restrictions and supply chain issues and all of those things have created delays that we never anticipated. And so it's a generous donation from York Developments. And I've talked to them and off and on throughout the last few months, and they're hoping to be on schedule for Canada Day this year. But you know, as I mentioned, supply chain issues and overruns and timing and staffing and all of those things have all become challenges that we didn't expect or anticipate over these past couple of years. So they're working hard to get us there, but it will be there, but the timing is still a little bit uncertain, I'm afraid. One of the questions, I'll get into the questions now, and one of the questions that's come up is around snow clearing. And as Doug mentioned, he's looks after snow clearing for the roads and the sidewalks, and my team in parks look after the snow clearing on the pathways. And one of the things that happened, the big spine of pathway connection throughout the White Oak subdivision is one that's been funded and been going in one of the only snow clearing pathways actually early on in the process more than 10 years ago. But about 4 or 5 years ago, council approved to try and do about 50% of the pathways, not the major Thames Valley pathway. We're actually clearing the snow on the major Thames Valley pathway now, but also to clear some of the pathways in the various neighborhoods. We have funding to do about 50% of those. What we try and do and what we focus on are those pathways that go from street to street and the pathways that connect a major park area. So there's some very small pathways and small parks that will get you to a playground, but they're not used by a lot. They're not really a connector to the neighborhood. So those are the ones that we don't do. And one of the ones that's been a little bit inconsistent over the past few years has been pathways to schools. The reason for that is it's a partnership that we have to work with the schools in order to do it. So there's city land and there's school land. And much like we have different councils every 4 years, they have trustees, budget issues, a variety of things. And it's been a little inconsistent. So we try to work with them because there's no sense in us plowing halfway to the school property and then they don't carry on from their end. And that's what we've run into a little bit through the years. But I'm in recent talks with the school board again. They're on board with trying to increase walkabilities to schools, increase those opportunities for students to access schools in different ways. So we're on board and having really good positive talks to try and move forward with some pathway plowing in parks that lead to schools that will continue from the park property into the school property to allow for that school pathway snow removal as well. The one thing that's challenging that people don't understand, and there was a bit of a question earlier tonight about the snowpack and ice and why downtown and some things like that. And one of the challenges we have in parks is the salt and sand, the turf, the wind and drifting. It's just a different type of scenario. It's up and down hills. There's lots of curves. Those paths meander. They aren't the straight pathway as a sidewalk. So it's a little more challenging to get that same type of coverage. So we're trying to get it to a place, as soon as there's 5 centimeters, the local sidewalks, that's increased from, it used to be 8 centimeters. Now, as soon as it's 5 centimeters, we get those sidewalk plows out there on the pathways as well. But the challenge is it doesn't follow up with salt and sand as like it does in some of the other areas. So you end up with snow and ice pack. So it helps you from having to trudge through deep snow, but it creates its own issues as far as slipperiness. So it's a challenge that we're still trying to work on. And there's lots of different products that Doug and his team look at all the time, everywhere from different chlorides and beet juices and all those different things that help remove ice and snow. The challenge is some of the traffic and the different traffic that you get and the wind and the drifting and the freeze thaw cycles like we had this year. So always challenges, but we're working on it. So, and I think that's a summary. I've just got the old entertainment hook there. It's good. No, it's all good.
He was missing my little like rapid dancing arms. Like back that up. So another applause for Scott because I think he delivered. So thank you for your time tonight, Scott. As staff didn't have to come out. I can't make them come out. So they did give their time to us. Everyone's still in the room, so you're welcome to ask people questions one-on-one until they take leave and sneak out. That's fine. A reminder, just drop me an email to epeloza@london.ca. Whatever your question is, staff will make sure it gets to the right department or the right level of government. We've taken notes tonight, and we'll pass those on to the appropriate departments, as well as the questions that came in. They've been captured. This recording, once again, is going to be saved and uploaded, so you can watch it again or go back and find some specific answers. Doug's wonderful slide deck will go out as well, so people can refer to it and have it in front of them if they joined us virtually as well. I think that's everything. Lorianne, did you need something quick?
Really quick. It, school board is doing the large school, so they're moving down and then moving batteries all over London. So we're doing that right now. You can go on the KDSA website to put questions or